Kia ora koutou, everybody. Today I'm announcing the next component of our latest law and order package. As I indicated yesterday, we're focused on the three pillars of prevention, protection and accountability. I said yesterday that the system needed a shake-up and announced the first of the changes that seek to break the cycle of offending, back the police in their fight against crime and increase the accountability of offenders. Today, the government's taking further steps to strengthen the youth justice system. We'll be starting work on 2 new high needs units, and we'll be making changes to legislation to make residences safer and more secure. When a young person is sent to a youth justice facility by the court, the public have an expectation that they'll not only be held accountable for the crimes that they've committed, such as a ram raid, but they'll also receive the rehabilitation support that they need. Youth justice residences need to be secure, safe places, and it's become clear that the introduction of 17-year-olds into that system has created challenges and we need to do things differently. Today I'm announcing the government will start work towards building 2 new youth justice units that will cater to up to 30 higher needs youth. These units will aim to provide more intensive support for the most serious offenders and will predominantly cater for older teenagers. There's a big difference between a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old and the support and the guidance that they need, and so we need a continuum of care that recognises that. I want to make sure that these units are designed with the best possible rehabilitation models in mind for these offenders. While we're working to provide residences with the flexibility, the resources and the facilities that they need to deal with different levels of offending, it's also clear that the best way to both reduce victimisation and to break the cycle for a young person is to provide support and supervision for them and their family as early on as possible. So today I'm also announcing that police in Oranga Tamariki will be changing some of their procedures. They'll be developing a protocol to streamline the process for referring a young person to a family group conference so that we're responding quicker when a young person has breached a family court order. This will add greater accountability with offences like ram raids and smash and grabs automatically reaching a threshold for police to refer an offender to a family group conference. We know that these processes often reduce the chances of young people re-offending. We know that the public want us to put resources and effort into breaking the cycle of criminal offending and to get these young people back onto the straight and narrow. When the family court has granted custody and support orders for these young people that include conditions to manage the risk of reoffending, we need to respond quicker to any sign that that's happening, and these protocols will help us to do that. Making sure that police and Oranga Tamariki work together and have clear processes when someone should or shouldn't be referred to a family group conference will help to speed up the system and to lead to better results for everybody. I'm now going to pass over to the Minister for Children for some other significant changes that we're making.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Tēnā koutou katoa. So as has been canvassed by the Prime Minister, the public have an expectation that anyone who commits a crime is held accountable. Our youth justice facilities play an important role in that equation, and if a judge sends a young person to a residence, they need to be safe, secure and receive the rehabilitation that they need. It's no secret that there have been some serious issues in youth justice to sort out. That is why Mike Bush has been brought in to lead that work, and I've no doubt his review will get to the bottom of it. But we have also seen challenges emerge through the introduction of older teenagers into youth justice residences. While COVID masked the initial impact of this, those difficulties have started to become clear, and I've been working with Oranga Tamariki to try and resolve this, driving changes such as better staff training. But the escalating behaviour, such as increased attempts by groups to escape onto the roof and put themselves and staff at risk, means more needs to be done. That is why we are proposing some legislative changes to the Oranga Tamariki Act to make these residences safer and more secure. Firstly, we will introduce the ability for anybody entering a youth justice residence to be searched. Currently, there's no ability to require this of staff or visitors, and only limited ability when a young person arrives. Unfortunately, this is allowing contraband such as vapes, cell phones, and even weapons to get into the facilities, and that is unacceptable. So under this change, anybody, be they staff, family, or a young person, will have to undergo a non-invasive search akin to something like courtroom security. Secondly, at the moment, staff can only place a young person in secure care if they are going to escape or hurt somebody else. We will add an extra tool for staff by allowing a young person to be placed in secure care if there is an imminent risk of a mass disorder event such as the group roof escapes. There will be very strict guidelines around this, and de-escalation is always the first approach, but it will allow staff to act when they know something is brewing with a group of young people. Lastly, we know that the best option to reduce the chance of a young person reoffending is to put the resources and effort in early to break the cycle. We are doing that with things like the circuit breaker fast track approach, but family group conferences also play a big part when a child offends. So that is why we will put extra resources into hiring more family group coordinators who, for the first time, will solely focus on youth justice issues. We expect this to allow for about 350 extra family group conferences, which can often be the difference in stopping a young person heading down a pathway of crime. Thank you. I'll now pass back to the Prime Minister to wrap things up.
Thanks, Kelvin. These measures build on the wide-ranging work that we've already been doing to address youth offending. Some of that work is starting to make a real difference, but we know that we've got more work to do. We're going to keep our focus on what works, and that means getting the right mix of consequences, rehabilitation, and community protection.
Prime Minister,
Jenna.
How long are they going to take to build, and what are you going to do with those older kids in the meantime? If it's a problem now, what is the immediate solution?
We haven't got a timetable for how long the residences will take to build. Obviously, it will take. We'll be asking them to step up the pace and do that as quickly as possible. We're looking at Auckland and Christchurch on building them where we already have existing facilities, which will help to speed up the process. But I'll ask the Minister to comment on that as well.
Yeah, so it's also about the model of care, because we don't have a continuum of care in New Zealand, whereas other overseas jurisdictions do. So basically, any young person entering a youth justice residence, it's one size fits all. We believe that for those with higher needs do need to have a different model of care, but also we've identified that the youth justice residences have some design flaws that make it possible for young people to scale the roofs. We are addressing that at the moment. So there's about two things. It's about the building of 2 units and also about changing the model of care. Sorry, Jim.
I'll let you finish that.
The Children's Commissioner is telling you to tear these things down. Why are you building new ones?
Yeah, so we've got to remember there's a difference between the care and protection residences, which are for young people who haven't committed a crime but have trauma. Those are what the Children's Commissioner is saying need to change. The youth justice residences, they need to be there. They are for young people who have committed crime, and often some of the most serious crimes. So we do need to make sure that we have the youth justice residences, but they need to be fit for purpose, and the model of care for them needs to be, as good as it can be.
Mikey.
So why not say today that you're going to separate 17-year-olds out completely if they're so problematic when it comes to those younger people?
So the previous national government in 2017 changed the law. All parties agreed to it. I think it was the right thing to do. It came into effect in 2019. We were sort of, like I said, masked from COVID, sort of masked some of the problems because there was less offending and fewer young people in youth justice residences. I think it is still the right thing for them to be in youth justice residences. We can, and not all of the older young people, the 17 or the 18-year-olds are have the worst behaviour. So I don't think we should just plonk all 17 and 18-year-olds into these other facilities. It's more for those with the highest needs.
In terms of placing problematic children placing them into secure care, if it's looking like something is boiling over or something is bubbling up. I mean, that's a very kind of, you'd have to be very sure about making that decision without something having happened first. Like, how do you ensure that staff make the right call in those situations?
Yeah, probably the best way to describe it. So if there is an incident that's happening, as we've seen in the last, a few weekends back, then so young people in a unit may have done that, and other young people in another unit may have seen that is happening, and then the staff can tell if they're sort of colluding, but there's been no way to sort of dissipate their collusion. This is more like secure timeout. Now, just so you know, the secure units are similar to the other units. They've just got a few more security features. So it's not about locking them into a room, a cell, and leaving them there. They do have a common area. They do have rooms that the young people can go to, but it's about being able to put them into the secure unit just until the the need dissipates.
Though, if they haven't actually done anything wrong yet?
Well, the thing is that we have to make sure that both the young people themselves are safe. So allowing them to, say, get up on a roof or to cause another thing is dangerous. Other young people are at risk, but also the safety of staff. So we've got to make sure that we look after everybody's safety in the first instance.
Jason.
Have you got a cost estimate for how much these new facilities are going to cost?
Yeah, so we will have business cases developed for these. Like I say, my preference is for units already to be built where youth justice residences are, not totally new facilities in their own right, but we have to go through the business case.
The design has to be done before you can come up with a cost, because it's ultimately going to depend on what the model of care is, and therefore what the design required is.
So you haven't got a design, you haven't got a cost estimate, you haven't got a time frame on how long they're going to take to build. Is this all a bit knee-jerk to something that you've seen happen in the news a couple of days ago, a couple of bad polls, and you're deciding to get tougher on crime today?
Not at all. We need to let people know that we're doing this work. If we started to do all this design work and started to go out and procure the construction of these facilities without telling anyone about it, you would tell us that we were doing some secret agenda. We're being transparent about the work that we're doing.
But if this isn't going to happen until after the election, isn't this more of a Labour Party policy than a government initiative?
No, it's a government initiative.
Yes. Yesterday you said building youth jails as National Act has proposed only serves to turn young offenders into hardened criminals when they come back into the community and doesn't break the cycle. Yet today you're announcing 2 new units. I mean, what's different to what National Act's proposing?
Well, what ACT are proposing is effectively a prison run by corrections that would have up to 200 beds in it. So it's basically a mega prison for young people. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a continuum of care for troubled young people who have, in some cases, done serious offending and who need some serious support to rehabilitate, to get back onto the straight and narrow, and to face the consequences for what they have done. That's different to basically setting up a mega prison for kids.
Yeah. Can I also, can I add to that? Because these young people will already be in the youth justice residences, but this is when it's identified that they need that higher level of care. So it's not like building something to fill up with more young people. These are young people who are already in youth justice residences, but it is found that they have a higher level of care. And if I can just switch hats and put on my corrections hat, when we made the decision to build Waikeria, we also had the 100 mental health beds, and it's akin to that, where they will need a lot more intensive support, but it's not about bringing in more kids and building a whole new facility.
Luke.
Just for clarity though, I mean, this is essentially incarcerating children. Exactly how old are the kids who are going to be in this care?
In the high needs area, well, I guess until their needs are sort of looked at and worked out. Like we were saying, there'll only be probably 30 beds, so it's not like we're expecting huge numbers to go in there, but it is to work with them on their specific high needs in the time that they're there. There'll be opportunities for them to go back into the other units.
secure facility going to be? So for older kids?
Yeah, well, potentially for the older kids, but also it depends on the level of need. So if there's, say, a 16-year-old with a high level of need that needs to be there, then we would expect that they have an opportunity to go there as well.
And by high level of need, you mean basically they're really violent or something like that, yeah?
We've got to remember where these young people come from. They all have huge levels of trauma and upbringings that you and I can't imagine. But some of them act out even worse than others. And so it's about making sure that those who have the highest need receive the care that they need.
In plain language though, right, the purpose of these facilities is to have somewhere to put dangerous teenagers with a focus on rehabilitation. Is that it?
Yeah, so the model of care that I spoke about, I would anticipate greater mental health support, greater counselling, all of those things that all of those young people need, but just it needs to be more intensive for those with even higher needs.
I read a story a couple of weeks ago about an OT facility advertising to get people through student job search to work in their facilities. Where are you, it's a tight labour market. Where are you going to get the people to work in these new facilities? It's pretty tough.
Yeah, and that's a good question, and I keep pointing Oranga Tamariki to the campaign that Corrections has run and saying that we need an intensive campaign like that to attract people to become the social workers and caregivers in these residences. But we need to make sure we have the right people with the right skills in that job, and I haven't been happy with the way staff have been recruited or trained.
Joe?
Just on that staffing issue though, if the staff were, because we've seen examples of 2 weeks of training for some of these staff, and obviously there's not a lot of incentive to be working with what are potentially quite dangerous youth. So in terms of getting staff into these facilities, how are you actually going to achieve that? Because isn't that almost the bigger problem? Because you could keep the residences that you've got currently and the system you've got currently, and if you had the right staff with the right skills who could offer the right care, it could be working better where it is now, couldn't it? Is that a fair judgment to make?
Yeah, but with the introduction of the older young people, there is also greater need there. But like I say, I'm not happy with the recruitment. I'm not happy with the training. You're right. The training has now been increased to 6 weeks. I still don't think that that's enough. But these are all things that we have to work through, and Mike Bush's review will get to the bottom of these things.
What I'm asking is that if you create 2 new facilities, but you can't get to the root of the staffing issue, which seems to be the long-term problem across these residences, is that you have not got staff who are equipped enough to deal with some of the issues that they're being presented with. Does creating 2 new facilities and still not having staff able to cope with these situations, is that actually going to address the issue?
So the facilities will take a bit of time to be built, which will give Oranga Tamariki an opportunity to identify, recruit and train staff. I'm picking there will need to be, and again I hate to refer back to Corrections, but they have been working with the Whatuora, Iwi and Corrections to develop a model of care, and I would expect something similar from Oranga Tamariki.
We'll go to Jenna and then Mikey.
From whānau to this, you would have broached whānau and iwi as well to mana whenua who are going to have these facilities in their rohe. So what's been the response from whānau, Papuaninga?
So mana whenua facilities on these areas, we would, in terms of working through
having their tamariki in these care facilities?
Well, I think whānau would be happy that their young people are receiving a higher standard, a higher level of care to meet their higher needs.
I guess the partai was, what level of consultation did you have with whānau to ensure that they were their kiddies, their tamariki were receiving the care?
Well, there's been a lot of engagement with whānau around some of the issues, and But we have made this decision because we believe it is in the best interests of young people to have the highest standard of care.
Well, we'll go to Jenna and then Mikey, and then we will wrap up because we're going to be on the bridge again shortly anyway. So,
what is the minimum age of someone that could end up in one of the new youth justice facilities?
In the youth justice facilities, I believe it's 12 through to.
You could lock 12-year-olds up.
Yeah, but what we would like to do is address them, such as the family group conference coordinators. That's the reason we want to prevent young people from going into residences in the first place. And that's why this isn't just about the residences, this is about supporting young people before they go there. And like we say often, family group conferences prevent them from reoffending.
bearing in mind that this is based on a needs assessment for that individual.
Are you comfortable with locking up 12-year-olds in a youth justice facility?
I'm not comfortable with locking anyone up. My preference is that no young people experience trauma and no young people end up committing crime. That's my total preference. Sorry?
And that's everyone's preference.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
a novel approach. If Acton National had come out and said the same thing as you, that they were planning on putting 12-year-olds in these facilities, you'd be ropeable.
Yeah, well, we're not planning on, we're trying to prevent these young people, but the question was, what is the minimum age?
You said that these would be focused though at older kids.
At those,
So what's going?
sorry, at those units. So I misunderstood. I thought you meant youth justice residences.
The new units, what is
Sorry.
the minimum age for the new units?
Oh, sorry. So we are anticipating. Sorry, I did misinterpret what you were asking. So it will be for the older young people. Well, at this, like I say, the business case, the model of care needs to be developed, but we're anticipating 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds. There may be some 16-year-olds, but the idea is to address their needs, the needs of young people, and it depends. Even some very young people have very high level, needs. And that's what they're for. This isn't about punishing them. This is about supporting them and helping them to rehabilitate, regardless of their age.
I'm confused as to whether there's a line, as to whether you've got to be over the age of 16 or whether you're going to end up with 12-year-olds in the new units or not.
Look, like I say, the model of care will be developed. I have a preference right now for it to be the older end of the spectrum, but we will confirm those details. We haven't made a decision, but my preference is for the older people.
Mikey?
Minister, you cannot categorically say that 12-year-olds won't be put into those new units with 17 and 18-year-olds.
Well, so it's not, like I say, the model of care, right now, it's about a model of care, and if they were to be in there, we'd have to look at ways to make sure that their needs are met. But at the moment, we're talking about the older young people.
But you cannot be categorical on that. So there could potentially be 12, 13-year-olds in there with 17, 18-year-olds.
My preference is no, but like I say, the model of care is yet to be developed. I would prefer not to have that happen. But
Just in terms of the detail, why do you not have more of the detail today, cost and all of that sort of detail? Why do you not have more detail today?
Well, because in order to do that work, you need to tell people that you're going to do it, and that's what we're doing.
And what do you say to critics who might suggest that more family group conferences is again Labor being soft on crime?
I don't agree. Family group conferences can prove to be incredibly effective in terms of preventing reoffending, in terms of getting kids, straightened out and back on track early on in their potential offending. So we know that there's a good evidence base to show that that works. We know that some kids don't end up there quick enough. That's what we're trying to address.
If the new units are designed because you've got a problem with older kids in the old units, why have you not set a minimum age for those new ones so that you don't have those kids mixing with the younger ones?
yeah, look, we can set a minimum age. What I'm saying is, at the moment, we will work through the model of care. But even if there were young people in them, then there would be ways to keep them separate. But the thing is that this is for rehabilitation. This is about making sure that their trauma